What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
Right. It's the fifth Bareknuckle MMA. He's done, I think it's been like 4 boxing shows, Gamebred Boxing, which I've been commentating on those and been part of those. And then he's also got, check out Icon MMA. So those are the ones that they were on UFC Fight Pass. Nickel, that was his first ever pro MMA fight, was on his show. And then that I think is actually, that's going to be coming back really soon. Jorge Masvidal's Icon MMA. So that's what, like, it's wild. I talked to him about on the press conference. Like, it's not even, he doesn't even have just the bare knuckle MMA. He's got boxing, he's got MMA, he's got like literally 3 different promotions that are all like on fire, ascendant. It's awesome. He's really killing it. It's amazing.
Today we have a very special guest. He is someone that I just started collaborating with over the past couple months, and he is the co-owner of Fight Bananas. So obviously, if you've been following me, you know that I've been doing the Dana White's Contender Series post show, and I did the Gamebred FC post show on Fight Bananas, and I'm continuing to collaborate with them on a variety of different things in the MMA world. So I'm really excited to bring him on. He's also a podcast host and somebody that I just have a lot in common with and have had a little bit of a similar journey. So I'm really excited to kind of learn more about what he's doing in the future of Fight Bananas and how we're going to work together and all sorts of different things, talk about MMA. Let's go ahead and welcome Mr. David Van Auken. Hey.
Hey, friend.
What's up? It's funny because we haven't actually done like a video stream together or anything yet.
No, we haven't.
So it's like we're meeting for the first time.
Hello, friend.
How's it going? How are you feeling coming back from Jacksonville from Gamebred?
I'm still like tired. It's weird. I usually can go and go and go. It's kind of like my superhero power, I guess. But yeah, I'm a little. Like I said, I'm taking the next kind of couple days. But I'm feeling it. I am feeling it for sure.
Yeah, it definitely looked exhausting. You guys were doing a lot. You were doing the press conference. You did the interviews in the cage. You did the pre-show. I mean, did you do probably more stuff than that even too?
Yeah, like so then that was Wednesday. Thursdays like was the weigh-ins, and and then not that, like, so like Jacksonville, so we didn't stay there. I guess that was probably the other little thing we talked about that too. If the show was in Biloxi, of course, we would have just stayed there and probably in a weird way got more rest. But Jacksonville was like an hour and a half. So like after everything was over, we were driving back to my house back home. And like that was kind of taking a toll, like every morning getting back up and driving back and forth. So it was a long day.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but it was awesome. It was crazy. So much fun.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. What was it like? Have you met Jorge before that, or was that? I guess how many times have you? Okay, so you've worked with him on things before.
20.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah. He's kind of a little bit my boss. Pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
So how long has he been doing the Gamebred FC events? Because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I just started hearing about them recently. But I think it's been going. I mean, this is like the 5th one, right?
So this is like the
for
5th,
MMA at least. Right.
It's the 5th bare knuckle MMA. He's done, I think it's been like 4 boxing shows, Gamebred Boxing, which I've been commentating on those and been part of those. And then he's also got, check out Icon MMA. So those are the ones that they were on UFC Fight Pass. Nickel, that was his first ever pro MMA fight, was on his show. And then that I think is actually, that's going to be coming back really soon. Jorge Masvidal's Icon MMA. So that's what, like, it's wild. I talked to him about on the press conference. Like, it's not even, he doesn't even have just the bare knuckle MMA. He's got boxing, he's got MMA, he's got like literally 3 different promotions that are all like on fire, ascendant. It's awesome. He's really killing it. It's amazing.
That is cool. Yeah, I didn't even realize that when I first heard about it, because I knew he had the Gamebred boxing and I had heard about that. And there's so many MMA organizations that, like, up until now, I feel like for a while I was just trying to keep track of like the UFC and Bellator, and I was like,
Right.
everything else is like
Right.
mush in my brain. So now I
Yeah.
finally feel like I'm like, okay, I know the differences between them, and I feel like that part of it I'm getting a lot better at learning. But it took me a while to kind of figure it out. But I guess Gamebred is, like, it's in so many different things. Like, in Jorge, kind of has his hands in a bunch of different pots, which is really cool. And it's
Yeah.
crazy actually how much he is able to do. And he's talking about even maybe possibly coming back to fighting. I don't know. He's crazy.
I know. It's wild. I'm really intrigued on that side of it too. And he's always said it, like, he's literally been a fighter his whole life. And he's not been a fighter, he is a fighter. Like, he is a fighter.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally game bred to fight. He was born on this planet to be a fighter. So, like, that's who he is deep down in his soul. I think everyone is born with some kind of reason, right? Whatever people believe in whatever way, right? He is born a fighter. And I don't think that ever goes away. I just think really deep down in soul, like, he wanted to become a UFC champion, or wants to fight at the toppest level, at the highest level. And I think maybe he knows that he's like, man, he did lose a step, and what he was 4 years ago when he was on the greatest run of his career, he might not be that guy. But maybe he needed this, maybe a little time off, maybe a little time away. Maybe he comes back and kind of does that once every 18 months kind of a thing. I think at the right person at the right time, I think he will. And I think he could come back for a super crazy big fight. I think that would be cool. And I think he would do that. But I don't see him, like, you know what I mean? Like, in the rankings, fighting number 6 or number 4, like what he was doing towards the end, like fighting Gilbert Burns. Like, I don't see him ever doing that again. But of course, any mega crazy big fight, it's wild. I cannot believe that the Jorge versus Conor fight never happened. Like,
I
that would have
know.
been,
That's such a big money fight.
I know, that would have been the biggest fight after the Nate Diaz BMF and Conor. I think he defeated Cowboy Cerrone. It was right before COVID happened. That would have been, to me, the biggest fight in the history of the UFC. Like, they were both at the
Yeah.
highest peaks. That would have been massive.
Yeah. And of course you could still sell that fight, but it's not the same as like when they were both kind of in their prime.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been huge. That would have been so huge. But who knows? I mean, you never know. MMA is crazy. Like, I never thought I would be seeing John Jones fighting Cyril Gane, and then now fighting Stipe. So it's like all kinds of crazy stuff happens, and fights get announced sometimes, and I'm like, what? Like, it's crazy. But so you're commentating, you're doing all this stuff with Jorge, with the Gamebred promotion. You're doing obviously a lot with Fight Bananas, you're doing post shows, you're doing all kinds of different things. Kind of like me, I kind of just, I just tell people, I'm like, I have ADHD, which I also have what I call shiny object syndrome. So whenever I just run with something, then I don't know. I like to create things. So I feel like we're kind of similar in that way, which is really cool. But did you ever think that this was going to be your life? Like, how did this happen? Like, it's so cool to me. I think it's really cool. So I want to know kind of like, how did this happen?
So first answer is no. Like, I never thought I would have this would be my life, or I've gotten this even far. And it's crazy because I always say this, and the people closest to me are like, oh no, like, you're still even just getting started. Like, it's awesome when I hear that from like my closest friends, or like the people who know me the best are like, no, like, you're still even going to get even bigger and better than this, which is awesome. I love hearing like stuff like that positive reinforcement. Yeah, no, it's just I always say this. I'm definitely still am, and I think that's a big reason why I maybe am successful, or a little successful that I am. I'm still a fan. Like, I still just love it as much as I did the very first day. I watch everything. I literally Tuesday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, the biggest UFC too. And I think this is maybe a reason why I maybe gives me a little bit of advantage than like the next person. Like I still absolutely love like the regional shows, stuff that's on UFC Fight Pass. I love the come up, if that makes sense. I love everything on the rise. And so I'm still just a massive fan of course, combat sports and mixed martial arts. So I just intake everything. Absolutely intake everything. Fight Bananas really came, it was Dean Tool and myself and Dean Tool's baby. And there's like a long history behind it. I kind of told the story a couple of times, but long story short, Dean Tool and I, Fight Bananas it's probably been around close to 6 years now instead of 5. We're getting to that point, getting close to 6. And he's like, hey, like he's had this on the back burner. He's had this name Fight Bananas in like a website and had it like a Facebook page for a little bit even before me. And it was just kind of put on the back burner because he was, promoting his own fights and island fights and his own things. And then I came around and, we started kind of working together and it's like, boom, let's go. And then I took it, like you said, I was like, hey, no, this is awesome. I took it, started running with it. And it just started like clicking and working. And I'm like, hey, I like talking into a microphone. I like having shows and podcasts. I was like, hey, I'm going to have my own show. And then that started going and taking off. And then I was like, I always thought like a brand, anything like let's just talk about ESPN or MMA Fighting or MMA Junkie. Like it's not just one person. Like that was the one thing from the very beginning. And like a lot of people, even when they saw me in Jacksonville, they're like, some people see me and they say, hey, that's the Fight Bananas guy, which is really cool. And it is cool that people say that. But like, I always thought like it needs to be Fight Bananas if it's ever going to work or it's ever going to like literally take off or become a legitimate brand in the MMA space. Like it needs to be more than just Dave Van Auken. It needs to be a legitimate MMA brand with multiple people doing multiple different things and multiple different, platforms of that sort. So like I started like just kind of, hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do this. And it's awesome how it was awesome. One night, I believe we did 3 or 4 different people we covered 3 different shows in 3 different states, and we were all on the socials, on Instagram and on Facebook, like covering the event. And it was like we were at a PFL event, a UFC event, and I think like at island fights in 3 different states. And it was like, wow, that's a brand, like that's a legitimate, MMA media brand. So it was really cool. And yeah, the rest has been history. And then it's weird how I got into, I kind of did a little Instagram story like a couple of days ago with Dean. Like I really thought I was just I love podcasting. I've always been a podcast guy. Like we talked about it off air a day or two ago about like Joe Rogan. And I love Pat McAfee. Colin Cowherd's a really big sports guy. And I just love podcasting before it was cool to be podcasting. And so like I had a podcast, but like Dean even said, he's like, hey, like, have you ever done commentary? I was like, no, I've never done it. And he's like, why don't you try? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I that's like a lot, like to go live for 3-4 hours. The red light is on. Like you got to think like on top of your head quick. Like there's some things you can't say. Like there's like a lot of stuff about it. Now he's like, no, like you should, like that's like you try it. Come on. So I did it once, absolutely loved it. Like I was like, whoa, like that was incredible. There's nothing like it, because even podcasting, you can pause, like you can, stop and delete, like you can kind of go back when you're doing commentating. And also too, like when you're podcasting, like we know the direction that we might want to go into. Like when you're calling a fight, you don't know if it's going to be a grappling match, a war, a 5-second knockout, a boring fight. Like you don't know what it's going to be. So it's incredible. Like there's just nothing like it. So yeah, I started doing that. And then one time he called me, he's like, hey, you're going to host the press conference. And actually one guy missed a flight. It happened like that. And like, I think I told you this off air too. Like, I just say yes to everything. I'm like, he kind of gives me opportunities and I go, yes. And he's like, hey, someone missed a flight. you want to host a press conference? And I go, yes, I've never done that before. I'll do that. So I said, yes. And now like, I'm the guy that's doing that. And then he's like, hey, you're going to do in-ring interviews. Have you ever done that? I'm like, no, I've never done it. Yes, I'll do that. And now I'm the guy doing that for Gamebred, and just keeps on going and going. And literally, so we're in Jacksonville, Maddie Levine and myself. And I thought about it. I go to Dean Tool, and there's a lot going on. And Dos Santos and Verdum, everyone's weighing in. There's like fights happening almost. Like, there's all these fighters. Everyone's hungry. It's like the real official weigh-ins. And I go to Dean and I go, Dean, like for the UFC and for major events, even like big boxing events, there's like pre-shows, right? Like everyone has like a pre-show. I'm like, there's no pre-show for this. I'm like, why don't we have a pre-show for this? He's like, Dave, that's a pretty good idea. He's like, who do you think should do it? I'm like, Maddie Levine and myself, we'll do the pre-show. And he's like, do it. Like, that's it. He's like, it was just that simple. It was that quick. And the next thing you know, it was awesome because Maddie was killing it. And Maddie and her husband, Ross, flew down. They stayed with us. It was so great to have them down. And I literally walked right to Maddie and go, hey, Maddie, tomorrow we're literally hosting the pre-show. She's like, what? It was so cool. It's just something like that. And next thing you know, we're hosting the pre-show. So just,
wow.
You always say yes.
That is wild. I never would have guessed that you guys just threw that together. Like, that actually looked really good.
It's so funny. And this is like way behind the curtain here. Dean messaged both Maddie and I, and literally one day notice, we started like working on a script, literally driving to Jacksonville. The producer, we kind of went back and forth. We had the guy's number. We started kind of working on some stuff. So we kind of, a little bit, Dean wrote us and said, hey, I just watched it for the very first time back. And he's like, I can't believe it was only like a day's notice. It seems like you guys did this 1,000 times together. You guys like worked awesome together. He goes, it was amazing. He's like, great job. I was like, it was really cool to kind of get that positive reinforcement. It seemed like everyone did like it. It seemed like we did kill it.
Yeah, you did. And I would do it, but I would be like, man, I wish I had more time to prepare for this. Cause right. I think that's like one thing that is good that I have, but also can be like my biggest, I guess, obstacle is that like I say yes to things and then I'm like, oh shoot. I'm like, I really want to be ready for this. Right. And I over prepare for things a lot of times. And but that's something that I feel like I've gotten better with trying not to do that. But that's why I think I liked working with you guys initially, because, it was kind of a last minute thing. You're like, oh, you want to do the Contender Series post show? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, because I'm going to watch it anyway. So I'm like, well, yeah, why not? I'm like, I love talking about fights. I love talking about MMA. And that is the kind of thing that I like to do. I like to just, hey, you want to do something? Okay, let's do it. And there's no it's just so simple. And I love that. And, and same with the Gamebred thing. It was just like, hey, you want to do, it's like, yeah, like it's so effortless.
And in a weird way, in a like kind of there was no, we didn't overthink it. There wasn't a lot of time to overthink it. There wasn't a safety net. It was just like, it was the day before we were at weigh-in. So we still had like a lot of weigh-in stuff to do. And Maddie, we were filming content. We were getting stuff for the weigh-ins. Literally like Junior Dos Santos and Verdum were right there in front of us. Like all that, like we were still working and we were like just doing all this stuff. And I remember driving back from Jacksonville, and we're like, wow, like, yeah, we got to like get ready for this pre-show. Like we need some. So we started kind of, and we knew like we had like 20 minutes, which it's funny. It seems like it's a short amount of time, but sometimes when you start talking, it can go forever. Yeah. Like, and you would rather have stuff that doesn't make the show and be like, oh wow, we never got to that, then go for 6 or 8 minutes and be like, holy crap, we have like 12 more minutes left and we have nothing else to talk about. And it's like, we're live, literally on just YouTube itself in America had 1 million views like in a day. it had the feed went to Brazil, over 200 million homes. Like, it was massive. Like,
Wow.
they've been telling us it's been a massive, massive hit.
Oh yeah,
Verdun
I didn't
Mendoza.
think about that. Brazil must have been huge in
Oh
Brazil.
yeah, yeah. Like,
Oh my God.
so in America, it wasn't on like a platform, wasn't on like Fox or ESPN, but
Right.
in Brazil, they bought it. Like,
Oh, really?
I think it was called Global. Like, they bought the rights, so it was on
Oh,
like their Fox. It was on like their mainstream. It was a big deal over there. Do you think Dos Santos and
wow.
Verdun was the main event? So another country, they bought the rights. It was a big deal. It
I did
was
not know that. That
yeah,
is crazy.
yeah, it was
Because, yeah,
wild.
I mean, everybody in Brazil that knows has any
Right.
bit of a fan of martial arts is going to watch that. Like,
Yeah.
uh, absolutely. Because it's just, yeah, especially with the history, like 15 years from the first fight to that fight. Like, it's just insane. I still can't even believe that he got them two together and bare
I know.
knuckle MMA fight. That's
I
so
know.
crazy. That's so nuts.
It's wild. And I think it's only going to get bigger. Like, I felt the whole night was so good. Like, the whole night was, the crowd was so, it was just, it's so much fun. Like, I've been
Yeah.
to UFC events, of course, I've been to PFL events, and just like, it's a party. It's like a scene. It's just, it's like there's just something about it. It's electric. Um, it's really cool. You got to go there live. Like, it's just one of those things, like,
Yeah.
you just have to be there. It's very real. I don't know what the right word is. It's like, just very, like, there's something about it. It's um it's, I don't know. It's like, it's nasty, it's visceral. There's just like all this. It's like such a cool event. It's awesome. Love it.
Well, I think it's cool too. And I was talking about this on my MMA podcast, but I think it's something that a lot of like the old school fans can get into because it's
Mm,
like, yeah, you don't have the whole like corporate feel that
yeah.
the UFC and PFL has, which is, I've talked to people that like they used to be into MMA and like they're not as into it anymore. And a lot of them are like, oh, yeah, I remember when they had sponsors on their shorts and like, they could soccer kick people to the head. And it's like, yeah, like that
Right.
is what they want. They want entertainment. Like they want to just, they don't necessarily care if this guy has the highest striking accuracy or if this guy has, they don't care about that. They just want to see fights. Like they,
Right.
they just want to
Right.
see people talk shit and fight each other. It's literally all they care about.
Right. Right.
And I think this is like the perfect thing for that type of fan to maybe like get back into MMA or like kind of have their own little MMA organization that they can kind of follow and keep up with, because the other feedback I've heard from people is like, oh, well, the UFC, it's too many fighters. There's too many events. I can't keep up with the fighters. I don't know who any of these people are. That's probably the biggest thing that I've heard. And then
Sure.
also it's like $80 for a pay-per-view. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm out. but
Yeah.
but then Gamebred, it's like, okay, well, it's free, at least for now. I'm sure that won't last long. but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's really cool and it's different. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not necessarily that these organizations like PFL and Gamebred, they don't necessarily have to take from the UFC. I mean, they're going to take some fans, some viewership from the UFC, but it's like you could also create your own fans and you can bring fans back that were
Right.
fans back in the day.
Right.
And, now maybe they haven't been into it because it's like, yeah, it's a whole different sport now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. Facts. I think it's a great point.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool that you kind of got to be involved with that. What do you think is like your vision, I guess, your future for Fight Bananas and just everything that you're doing?
Ooh, I love it. I want to I'm gonna sell it for $20 million. No, I don't know. Like, I love building. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, my boys, they love Legos. And it's funny, I think I wasn't a Lego guy when I was a kid, but I think I passed that down to them. And in a weird, funny way, I think Fight Bananas is my big Lego. I love building. And right now it's funny. There's been so many different like additions and takeaways. There's been different people that come and go, and I say this all the time. Anyone that's it's ever been involved with Fight Bananas, I'm grateful and appreciative to anyone that's ever helped and been a part of Fight Bananas since day one. But it's weird right now, September 15th, whatever it is, in 2023. Like, I love the team right now in Fight Bananas. Everyone that's like attached and everyone that's like a part of it, like right now, like I feel like all cylinders, like we are rolling. I love the people. And yeah, I just feel like it's just now the Lego pieces are all like attached and building. And now it's like, I feel like it's this close of kind of turning the corner. I think it's this close of, you know, and I know, you know, we talked off air about it as well, about like numbers and stuff of that nature. It's about like turning the corner, turning, you know, with our Facebook following and our socials and our IG and our website. It's hopefully now getting to making revenue, making positive revenue monthly, each month, over and over and over, and kind of creating a steady influx that's like, okay, now everyone has a role, everyone can make something, and it's just this positive thing that now, and I feel like it's one of those things when that starts, when you start, like it's easy to start kind of making more, like it's like one of these things, it's just like you just have to break through that glass. And I think that's it. Like, it's just I just want everyone that's attached to, you know, be supported, and yeah, just kind of keep on getting bigger and better. That's kind of it, really. I just want to anyone that's really helped the brand, help them back. That's kind of my 2 cents.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, and I think it's really cool. Like, I think that's why we're similar in a lot of ways with just like, yeah, I love creating and building things too. And I'm really excited to kind of, you know, be a part of that with Fight Bananas too. And like, not even just with my own stuff, but like helping you guys in figuring out like how we can make things better and how we can work together to grow. And it's cool because like we really are passionate about the sport and are passionate about creating content too. So I think that's perfect. And I think that's the one thing that everybody at Five Bananas has, is that passion. And you have to have that, because it's like, yeah, if you don't, then you're going to get so burnt out. And it happens. And that's why a lot of people quit creating content, because they're not creating content that they want to create. They're creating it for the algorithm. And when you create content for the algorithm, then yeah, it's just, it might work for a little bit, but then you're going to have to reassess every time they change the algorithm and they change different things. Right. So it's like, and every platform has a different algorithm. Every platform has different rules and different things. So it's like, really what you got to do is just do what you love and what you're passionate about. Talk about things that you know, talk about things you're passionate about. And then when you do that, that's when people will see it and people will just gravitate towards your content. Like, you might not go viral overnight doing it that way, but you're going to have a more loyal following if you do it that way. And it's like, you think about, you know, who are some of the biggest podcasts like out there? It's like comedians, you know, like Theo Vaughn and Tom Segura and Joe Rogan and all these guys. And it's like, well, what do? Well, they're just being themselves. They're just being silly. And
all those guys, Bree, like all those guys, they didn't just become like 0 listeners to 3 million over a month. Like, dude, a lot of them didn't have like, dude, Joe Rogan's been doing his podcast for like 16 years. Like, it's not like he was an overnight success. And like, I say that even about myself. Like, a lot of people, Maddie and I said this like on the way home from Jacksonville, sometimes like people would DM or message us, be like, oh, so I was doing the press conference and I got a message and it was like, dude, you're so lucky that like you're doing this press conference. Like, that's awesome. Like, and they weren't trying to be mean or anything, but I was like, dude, luck has nothing to do with it. Like, I'm not lucky to do this press conference. Like, I've been working my ass off for 6 straight years and like been putting in a ton of work nonstop. you know, driving to a lot of these events, working my tail off, and someone can see the picture on Wednesday with me, Masvidal, Junior Dos Santos, and Verdum. Like, that's awesome. That's really cool. I'm not going to lie. That's cool. But no one sees all the hours and the weeks and the months and the years, even before that picture to even get credited. And back to like what you're saying a little bit with like Fight Bananas is, it was so cool that, so like that, co-owner of Fight Bananas, but on that night, Friday, I had nothing to do with Fight Bananas. I'm doing a pre-show for Gamebred. I'm doing in-ring commentating, in-ring post-fight interviews for Gamebred. Like, I'm zero with Fight Bananas. Maddie Levine even did the pre-show as well, but she's doing content, like a lot of the pictures and videos that you saw on social media was through Maddie Levine and her husband, actually, Ross. Then we had Jonathan Ramakhan, who does a lot of the post shows on Saturday night. He was doing post-fight interviews, a lot that hasn't even came out yet, some that even has. I actually had one of my buddies, Michael Garapi, who lives close to me, that he was doing a lot of the videos and pictures. It was a whole army of Fight Bananas was there on Friday. It was awesome. And it's just so cool to see, like, it's becoming this thing that it's not just me. It's a numerous amount of people, a lot of hardworking people. And it was so cool that it didn't matter. Like, we're all like, I think you'll get the analogy. Like, we're all just like these little ants, and it didn't matter who got the credit. It was just about just getting the best content out there. We're all like interweaving with each other before the show. And it was like, hey, we're going to do this. If you guys get this, post this, we're just going to do this and do this. And it's just like this. It's awesome. It's really cool. And it's like, that's what I want. We're all a team. We're all positive. It's not about like, oh, this person gets the credit and this person,
Right.
and this person. It's like, I don't want that mojo on Fight Bananas. Like, it's like, I will, if I feel it or see it, like, I'll try to like kind of exclude them out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I really love, like I said, right now, September 2023, like the team of Fight Bananas right now, it's awesome. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. And yeah, I think it's always good to kind of prioritize collaboration over competition. Like, I've always really believed in that. And that's something that I think I've kind of matured a lot with too, is like, maybe I was a little bit more competitive, and I am competitive when it's necessary, but like, I was definitely more competitive like in the past. And then now I've realized that when you help other people succeed and you celebrate other people's wins, then it usually always comes back to you. And it's like, yeah, your time will come. Like, you're not going to be, headline, on the stage every single night. Like, you got to let other people get on the stage too. Right. So, I like that attitude. And that's cool because, at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's like, we're all helping each other because we're all have the same goal. We all have the same vision. So, we might as well collaborate and do what we can to help each other and make our whole vision like actually come true. So
right. And like, just a perfect example. And like, dude, I think Maddie Levine one with Fight Bananas and just ourselves, like, we are very good friends. Like I said, her and Ross stay at the house with us. And that moment, if I didn't, one, believe in her, and two, if we didn't have like a really good friendship, and three, I know that we could do the pre-show together, it was kind of me saying to Dean, like, hey, Dean, like, dude, Maddie and I could do this. Like, we could do this together as the pre-show. And it's all the time. Like, if there's people, if I don't believe in someone that to do it, I wouldn't suggest them to do it. Like, there's so many times that can happen. Like, I say this all the time. Some of the biggest decision in your career will happen when you're not even in the room. Like, there's going to be a time when another person will ask me or someone else, and they're like, hey, we need someone for this role. And I'll be like, hey, Brie Eckhart, like, she can do it. She's killing in this spot. We need someone live to do a post-fight thing, whatever. I'm like, dude, she's killing it. She did it for 10 straight weeks for the Contender Series. Absolutely killed it for Fight Bananas. And it's like, oh, boom, there you go. Like, it's wild to, like, if you're negative towards a person and like, you kind of like, X bridges out and you kind of, block people and it's all about me and stuff like that nature. Like no one wants to collab and work with people like that sooner or later. It's like, and I know a lot of people like that. And especially in the industry, they think they want to close everyone off and try to win by themselves. And hey, if they want to, more power to them and good luck to them. And if that's their way, awesome. But that's not, one, Fight Bananas, and two, that's just not me. Like I say all the time, we will all rise. I want us all to win. That's just our style.
Yeah, because it's like there's plenty of success to go around. Like that's what I always tell people. I'm like, it'll come around to you and that's one thing that like I said, I've just gotten a lot more clear on and better at, and because it's true. It's like when you help other people and you celebrate other people, you just feel better too as a person. Like you just it's good to celebrate your successes and it's good to like have your own little thing that you're doing. But at the same time, like it is really hard to do shit by yourself. Like it really is. Like I love doing my podcasts and everything by myself. And I think it's cool that I have my own thing that I started from the ground up. Like I didn't even know how to start a podcast when I started. I just figured it out. And it was fun. It was a good thing for me to do because it humbled me. And it made me realize like, oh, I think I could benefit from, being around other people that know what the heck they're doing. And it's like, you might have knowledge in an area that really helps me. Like you might have knowledge on like probably a lot more. You probably know a lot more about podcasting than I do. You probably know more about like equipment and things like that. And that's like, I am perfectly aware of that because I struggle, with that kind of
I
stuff.
love your editing skills. Your editing skills are awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dude, your editing skills are really good. I've been like, it's been a couple of weeks ago. I started downloading all your stuff and watching your stuff. I love how like you do the intros and stuff, dude. I'm a huge fan of your editing skills. You got hat off to you.
That's so funny because I always like watch my stuff and I'm so critical of it. So when people say stuff like that, I'm like, really? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
it's good.
It's good. I don't even use like one of the major like editing programs. I use Wondershare because my computer is like so like it's not built for video editing whatsoever. Right. I just like this is my computer, so this is what's gonna work. And, and so I don't even have like a Adobe or anything. I think I was talking to Jonathan about that because he asked me if I use Premiere Pro, and I was like, no, it crashed my computer when I tried to use it, so this is what I use.
I'm telling you, it's good. We're seeing. I think we talked about it together. I'm like, dude, you seen Bree's stuff? Like, it's awesome. Like, we're fans of it over here. Fight Bananas, like we're talking about you.
That is so cool. I did not realize that. It's funny because I watch a lot of YouTube, so that's how I started. I actually started with fitness. I was making fitness content when I first started, and I did some MMA stuff because it was just like I was just a big fan of MMA, and I'd always thought about starting an MMA podcast, but I wasn't ready to do it yet. I was like, I want to learn how to like do podcasts, and I want to learn how to make content and stuff first and learn the algorithm, and like I wanted to just really learn a lot about YouTube and podcasting before I even tried to do the MMA, because I'm like, the thing with the MMA podcast is that not only do I have to know how to do a podcast, but I also have to know a lot about MMA. So it's like two things I'm trying to throw at myself at the same time. So the plan the whole time was kind of, eventually down the road, I'll start an MMA podcast, but I didn't think I was going to do it as soon as I did. And it was because I was talking about MMA all the time on my podcast anyways. And even when I had guests on, we would talk about MMA like half the time. And I was like, oh, I need to do an MMA podcast. Like, what am I doing? And I'm like, oh, I'll keep this one, and I'll have this one. It'll be like long form conversations where I can just, talk to people and like just chill. It's not like a forced interview. Like, it's just chill, talk to people and have good chats and talk to all kinds of different people, fighters and stuff like that. But then doing the MMA thing, it's like, it takes a lot of mental energy. But I love it because I love one of the things that I really love, and you probably noticed this a little bit in my content, but I love digging into the stats, and I love digging into like just like the fighter's history too. Like before they were in the UFC, like what were they doing? How did they have like losses earlier in their career? Or, like, I love digging into that kind of stuff. And I think that's why I put so much time into mine, because I could do it a lot easier. Like, I make it harder on myself by like just the way that I want to do it, but I wouldn't want to do it any other way. So it's like, this is how I want to do it. And so like I like to break down the fights, and I like to talk about the upcoming fights, and I like to talk about just the whole scope of MMA in general. But yeah, like I always like to dig into that, and I like to sometimes even go back and watch old fights, and it's just like, sure, I love digging into it. And I think it's just because there's still so much to learn about the sport. And I think that's the great thing about MMA and covering this sport. And I'm not even like, I don't think either of us really would call ourselves journalists. But no. I guess, I mean, like, it's like you get that kind of thrown at you sometimes. Like, some people call me an MMA journalist, and like I've even said, like, you know, oh, MMA journalist. I have caught myself saying, and I'm like, I don't think I'm actually a journalist. I'm like, I didn't go to journalism school. Like, I don't know what I'm
not
doing.
At all. And like, I didn't even want to use this word because I think it's like I think it's egotistical, I guess. But like, I guess after this weekend, like it got used enough, and I guess it's like kind of threw me into that genre, if you want to say, like media personality. Like I was like, oh, I don't know if like I'm a media personality, but I guess like after this week of like doing the pre-show and doing in-ring comment, like you know, interviews and all that stuff, they're like, oh yeah, Dave, like you're like officially like media personality. I was like, all right, like I guess, you know. And then like one person's like, dude, like you've been a podcaster for 5 years, and you commentated over 20 shows, and you hosted press conferences like in 4 different states. Like, yeah, you're a media personality. I'm like, I guess, like I just never really, I don't know, like thought of that. But if you say it that way, it does make sense in the layman term, or especially how they use it. But I don't know, it was weird. After this weekend, I was like, I guess, okay, I guess you can say that. I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, I would probably be the same way. I'd be like, what am I, what's my title? Like, it would probably just be
definitely not a
surreal.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm a horrible writer. So Matt and I talked about that. I can't write. I know my strengths. I'm really good at a lot. I know my weaknesses. That's probably one of my weaknesses for sure. I'm a horrible writer. So that's something that probably maybe even one of our loopholes at Fight Bananas. I definitely probably need another writer or two. We have a great his name is Keelan, great guy. He lives in Europe, and he's been writing for the website, but I probably need to hire another writer or two for fightbananasofficial.com. That's something I might need to work on in the near future. But yeah, it's like just kind of it's like a big puzzle. It really is. We got so many great people part of the brand, and just kind of putting all the puzzle pieces together. And you know, really, like I said, probably for the rest of this year, I'm really working on getting a couple more sponsors or partners attached to the brand that want to more long-term. And that's another thing too. Like there's been multiple partners or sponsors that want to get attached, but they are like, oh, we'll do it for a month. And it's like, I don't want to do that, because I don't want to be like a bumper sticker, if that makes sense. And there's and maybe I should and maybe if they get attached for a month or two, maybe they'll stay. But I just like, I don't know why, I want a more of a long-term relationship with partners and sponsorships. So I'm like, no, I really don't want to do the month-to-month thing, but maybe I should start opening up to that. But I want more long-term, secure, really good, strong partners / sponsors. So that's something I'm working on for the next 2, 3, 4 months for, you know, coming out of 2024, like really swinging strong. But it's exciting. I love exciting. I love the direction that Fight Bananas is at right now, and where we're looking at and where we're going. I love the direction where Gamebred is at and where I'm at with them in the company and where we're going. So it's crazy. It's exciting times.
It is. Well, and it's such a cool sport to be involved in because, like, you know, I've been a fan of the sport for a while now, and I even kind of grew up around it. So, like, my dad is a big MMA fan. Even my mom, like, you probably saw on my
Your mom's
Instagram.
nailing Sean Strickland. Like your mom's got the best takes in the business. What are you talking about? Unbelievable.
It's funny. So many people were messaging me. They're like, "Can your mom do my picks next week for my,
Yeah.
my podcast?"
I almost messaged you that. I'm like, can your mom do the Fight Bananas picks next week? We need her to pick Grasso or Shevchenko. Like, we need it on Fight Bananas.
Oh, I'm gonna ask her again this week. I'm gonna be like, "Who you got, Mom? Grasso or Shevchenko?" But then now she's gonna probably start overthinking it, and she's gonna start like actually trying, and then she's gonna mess it up.
I'm telling you, 2 people in the world. It was literally Brendan, All-In Allen, and Bree's mom that picked Sean Strickland. 2 people in the world. Amazing.
I couldn't believe it. And I laughed at her when she told me, like, before I recorded the video, I was like, "All right, we're going to do your picks." I'm like, "Sean Strickland or Adesanya?" And she goes, "Strickland." And I was like, "Okay." It's like, whatever, Mom.
It's only the biggest underdog in the history of the middleweight division championship. Only, it's crazy.
I still can't believe that happened. What are your thoughts on that whole performance and just like that?
It's like, just even my style as a person, I'm going to go like the more positive route. Just like Strickland had a great fight. The end of the first round for sure. I don't know if he doesn't get that knockdown of Izzy, if he does that all 5 rounds. I really think it was one of those, like, I'm trying to say this the best way. That knockdown really changed the whole progression of the fight. It was just one of those, like, Izzy was like, whoa, he did get me. I got to be aware of him getting me. And just I heard this a couple of times. He just made it a different fight. He just kept on like walking so close to him. He got too close to Izzy, and he just like, Izzy just wanted a second to breathe and get in that kickboxing space, and he just never got it. Like, he just never got in rhythm. Some like Justin Timberlake just wanted to dance and just like feel the beat, and he just never got it. He just never got a second to breathe. And it's just weird. It's like when in any sport or song or vibe, if you're on a date or if anything, when like stuff starts going downhill, it's like, that's it. Like, it's just, you just can't get out of it. And round 4, like, I'm watching the fights. There's 6 people over my house. We're watching the fights. It's like Sean Strickland's about to win the championship. You just felt the momentum. And I don't know if Israel Adesanya put so much pressure on him being home and him being in Sydney, Australia, and him putting a lot of, just kind of pressure of him being the main event once again and headlining. And let's just be honest, I really do think he underrated Sean Strickland. I definitely feel like he just got through Alex Pereira. It was probably so emotional for him to beat him. And like, how cool was that video afterwards? Like, it was the bow and arrow thing, and that his speech afterwards, it was probably the most emotional win of his mixed martial arts career. And for him to go through that, then to Sean Strickland, which is like, I don't maybe need to train as hard. I'm going to beat him easily. And if you do that in mixed martial arts in the UFC, you'll lose. And I think that's kind of what happened.
I agree. And it's kind of similar, like GSP said about, I think it was, I can't remember which fight with Matt Serra, the one where he got knocked out. He was like, that was the least nervous I ever was going into a fight.
Right.
I got knocked out. And it's probably a similar thing. You get to that high level and you get to the point where, you feel bulletproof. And even though he had the loss to Pereira, he kind of gained his confidence back with with knocking him out even sooner. Because if you remember in that fight, Adesanya, he was having a good fight up until I think it was the 5th round that Pereira knocked him out.
He was winning the fight.
Yeah. So it's like he really, I mean, it was the 5th round. It was close to the end of the fight. He got caught. And it's like, and so he knew, he's not going to make that mistake again. He's going to capitalize on an opportunity with Pereira. And it's interesting. I was looking at some stats because I was like, okay, so Pereira, just demolished Sean Strickland, and when it made it look easy, and Adesanya couldn't do anything to Sean. I'm like, what is the deal? And I looked it up, and I know Pereira has way less UFC fights than Adesanya. He only has, I think, 6 UFC fights or something like that. But he has the 4th highest striking accuracy in the UFC. And Adesanya's not even on the list. He's at like 48%, I think, is his significant strike accuracy, which is lower than I thought it was. And Pereira's is 62%, I think, or it's in the 60s. And the highest is over him. It's 74. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that Pereira has that much more accurate striking. And of course, it's based off of less fights, but still, it's like, I thought Adesanya had like some of the highest striking accuracy in the UFC. So I was like shocked when I saw that. But now it makes a lot more sense because it's like, oh, well, Sean Strickland is really hard to hit. And Pereira, a lot more accurate apparently than Adesanya is, which is shocking. But yeah, I never noticed. And I guess maybe Adesanya throws a lot, and maybe the visual, it looks like he's landing a lot because he throws these fancy kicks and he does this crazy stuff. So you think he's more accurate. And I think his striking is more technical than like most fighters in the UFC. Like 99% of fighters in the UFC don't have that technical level of kickboxing like Adesanya. But the accuracy, yeah, it's not as high. And that was another thing I was thinking about, and I went on a little rant, talking about like how Anderson Silva, like, people were saying that Adesanya is better than Prime Silva and all that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, no. And I think to me, and I've been a fan of Adesanya for a long time. Like, he was one of the first fighters that I really, really got into and like followed like their whole story and like their background and watched some of their old fights, like kickboxing fights. And so Adesanya, I felt like really attached to, I guess. But then I kind of started to think about this when people were starting to do the comparison of Anderson Silva, because I've never really thought to compare the two, just because they're such different fighters. And I guess I kind of get it because it's like the middleweight, the reign that Adesanya's had, but to me it doesn't compare to Anderson Silva, in my opinion. But I think to me the biggest thing is just that Adesanya, is, a little more one-dimensional. Like, he's so good at striking, and he has so many tools when it comes to striking. He's very good at feints. He's very good. Usually, he wasn't so good in the Sean Strickland fight, but usually very good at controlling distance, controlling the octagon. That's something he's usually really, really good at, which is why it was kind of surprising to see him on his heels for 5 rounds. But he doesn't have what Silva had. Silva had a much bigger variety of attacks that he could use. Like, he had a really good jiu-jitsu. He had really good knees. Like, his knees are just, probably some of the best I've ever seen. They're just a thing of beauty. Like, every time I see Anderson Silva throw a knee, I get excited. I'm like, oh, it's so cool. So to me, that was the thing. And Anderson Silva was finishing his opponents, like, for the most part.
That's a great point.
To me, that was like the whole comparison. But I don't know. What do you think about Adesanya? What do you think? Do you think they're going to do the rematch?
A little quick Izzy thing. So, Fight Bananas, we posted this yesterday on Facebook. So he's headlined 12 pay-per-views: UFC 234, 236, 243, 248, 253, 259, 263, 271, 276, 281, 287, and just this past weekend at 293.
That's wild.
Ross Levine was there, and he goes, dude, I can't believe we all remember that video. They made it 100 times. When he fought Kevin Gastelum, he walks out, his lip is busted. He's fighting for the championship, and he goes like, I'll die for this. Like, I'll die. Like, he did not have that at all. Like, he's losing in UFC 293 at Strickland, and he just like, he kind of looked deflated, defeated. Like, he did not have any of that dog in him at all. Yes, pun intended. And it's just so crazy that And I'm like trying to think about like why. And if you think about it, so I just named off 12 UFC pay-per-views. Numbers are flubbed and sponsors and UFC, but let's just throw out a rough thing. If he made $1 million per all those events, and he maybe made 3 million or 5 million per the last one, maybe made less for the first ones, but it's just on average made $1 million. That's $12 million. Like,
Yeah.
let's just be honest. He's a different man now. He's a multi-millionaire now than what he was back then. Like, he was fighting for that millions of dollars. And it's just so funny. Like, no one knows, you know what I mean? Like, no one knows what kind of person Bree you will be, or what kind of person I would be if you give us $10 million. Like, that's, I don't know. You say, hey, yesterday, you want to do this podcast? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm hungry. I want to do more podcasts, more content, more information for me out there is great. If you give me $10 million, I'm like, Bree, actually, I'm going to Cancun the next 2 days. I told you I'm taking 2 days off. Maybe I'll take the private jet, taking the family. We're going to Disney for 2 days. Maybe I'll catch you on next week's podcast. Like, you just never know. So I just think that, like, long story short, I think I'm not saying Israel Adesanya is not a good fighter anymore. I just think he's a multi-millionaire, and fighting is such a hungry sport. And we saw Sean Strickland looked hungry and looked like a madman. And it's wild. And, I think that was a big part of it. So what's next for Izzy? Looks like Dana White wants to do the rematch. And it seems like MMA Media, and I guess I'm just part of the sheep a little bit. I wish they don't. I just think the middleweight division has had Israel Adesanya attached at the top for the last 5 years. And even Robert Whittaker, I feel bad that he just lost to Duplessis, because even he deserves to be in that mix. And now with Strickland being there, Cannonier and Strickland just fought in a split decision. I really do think that they should do Strickland versus DDP, make that a championship fight. You have Chimaev and Costa. You can have Izzy. Just give Izzy like a long break. Like, let him take
I do think he needs a
huge break.
5 fights in the last 2 years. 5 title fights in the last 2 years. That's
like,
crazy.
you can let that man rest for a while. Let's see what happens with Chimaev and Costa. Like, let's see what happened. You can even do that. The winner that might even fight Cannonier, and see who stays healthy, who's not. You can even have Cannonier maybe fight the winner of DDP. Maybe you can have Whittaker fight Strickland. Like, I don't know. There's just, you have so many options, which is great. And then, of course, Chimaev is the dark horse. If Chimaev goes through Costa in 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and it's like, holy crap, like, there you go. Like, you can have Chimaev versus DDP for the champion, Chimaev versus Strickland. So I just think it's like, you've had this Izzy train through, I just ran through all those pay-per-views literally for 5 years. Like, give him a break. Like, you can let him fight International Fight Week, or maybe even December of 2024. Let the middleweight division go like almost 2 fights. Like, I want Strickland, DDP, Whittaker, Cannonier, Chimaev, Costa. Let everyone fight maybe once or even twice, and then kind of see where everyone's at, and then strategize where Izzy goes, and see what happens.
Yeah, I think it definitely is going to depend on when Sean Strickland is going to come back. He didn't take really any damage in that fight.
Yeah, so, I would think soon, right? January, February at the latest.
I would think probably within the next 6 months. So if that's the case, if it's within the next 6 months or so, then I don't think the rematch is the best idea. I think we should get some fresh blood in there if that's the case. But a year from now, I could see Izzy doing the rematch, or maybe a year and a half, depending on how the timeline works, or who knows, maybe we'll end up seeing him fight DDP. I don't know. It's like, you just really don't know, and you don't know when DDP wants to come back. And and all these guys, it's like, there's a lot of variables, and it's like, it's really hard to even say right now what is going to happen, because that Costa Chimaev fight, that's a big fight for middleweight.
Right. Huge. It's a monkey wrench with everything. Not even that, like, You also have Cannonier and Whitaker, who like would love title fights and
Oh yeah.
and title shots. But with Izzy there, they weren't going to get it. But now with Strickland and maybe DDP, they both guys could get it. So it's wild. Like it just, the whole division's open. And to me, why kind of clog it back up with Izzy? And I
Yeah.
know it's amazing. It's Israel Adesanya. Like he is the second greatest middleweight of all time. So I know he gets it and deserves it. But like, like I wouldn't mind seeing Izzy in a non-title fight for once. Like give him
I
a fight
agree. I
night main
really
event,
want to
or
see
even
that.
a co-main event fight would be cool. Or God forbid, see him moving up to a light heavyweight fight. Like let's just kind of see what happens. Just let it breathe for a second.
Yeah. Well, and it would actually be kind of cool to see Izzy kind of have a similar run like Max Holloway's had. You know, he's not fighting in
Yeah.
title fights, but he's fighting in a lot of 5 rounders, main
Yeah.
events. And I think Izzy would have fun with that. And I think it'd be cool. And you could build a fight night, or you could even build a co-main event off of like Izzy DDP or Izzy Shemaev, or who knows, maybe at some point Izzy Bo Nickel, depending on how things shake out. I mean, it's crazy. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that could happen. Because it's like it depends. And middleweight isn't the deepest division, so it's like, you know, some of these fighters, they have a couple fights. I mean, look how fast Pajeda got a crack at the belt. Now he had a big kickboxing career before, but like Bo Nickel, perfect example. He had a very successful career before UFC, before MMA. So that to me is it's kind of a similar case to Pajeda, just in the opposite way. He's a grappler, he's not a striker. But yeah, there's a lot of fun matchups in middleweight, and I don't know, it's an exciting time to be involved in the sport. And I think the biggest takeaway for me from the Sean Strickland fight was first of all just how simple he kept it in that fight. He didn't really need to mix it up. He didn't have to wrestle, he didn't have to do jiu-jitsu, he didn't have to do anything, which is great because he managed his energy very, very well. And that's one advantage of his style. And I've talked about this, and it's like he doesn't really keep his hands high. And I don't, and people who haven't sparred or trained probably don't understand this, but when you have your hands up for, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it wears you out. When you hold your hands lower, you don't notice it as much. So the way that he, kind of rests his hands like in that Philly shell and does that shoulder roll so he doesn't leave his chin exposed. Now he's still open to like getting hit with a hook and stuff like that, but for the most part, yeah, he's pretty hard to hit. And I love that style because it is so simple and it is so effective at conserving energy, because like he never was even breathing. I don't even think he opened his mouth the whole fight. Like he was just chilling. Like he was just throwing 1-2s. Like he was in a sparring session. Like it was crazy. And it's funny because like he spars sometimes even harder than he fights, which is hilarious. He's just an interesting guy. But I love watching him fight. He's just fun. And he's fun just in general. Like his whole personality is hilarious. And, of course, he says things. Sometimes I'm like, what did he just say? But at the same time, it's just like, he's just being Sean Strickland. And I like that.
I agree. It's funny. Like a couple years ago, it's not like I don't dislike anyone. And with us covering all fighters, it's just one of those things you have to be like open and ready for anything. Maybe I wasn't his biggest fan, and it's just one of those things. Yeah. And then now it's been multiple years in a row and multiple big fights in a row. And it's like, he's kind of like worn me down in a way. I'm like, it's like, that's just Sean. It's like Sean being Sean. I would rather a fighter or a man or a woman just be themselves. And it's like, hey, if you're themselves and you're, unapologetic about it, and you have flaws, I have flaws, I fuck up all the time as well too. Like if you're just yourself, and like I can deal with that. It's the fakeness. It's the, not trying to call anyone out, but it's like maybe like the Colby Covington thing. Like when you put on the act of a sword, that's when I'm like, kind of just wears me out. Like sometimes that, or Henry Cejudo kind of thing. It's like, just if you're yourself, like, dude, Henry Cejudo, like he's a great person. A lot of the times it's like when he puts on the act, it's like, Henry, man, just be yourself, dude. You're a good guy.
Yeah.
So like, it's weird how Sean in a weird ways won me over, just being
Yeah.
himself, and just like, I'm like, oh, that's Sean Strickland, unapologetic about it. And okay, I'll deal with some of the craziness about it, but that's who he is. And you take with the good and with the bad.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that Sean is going to evolve and he's going to kind of, I don't want to say grow up, because I do think that he's probably more mature than we think. He just says crazy things, and but I think that he's gonna grow, and I think that he'll kind of polish that up a little bit. He's still gonna be Sean, but I think he's gonna be Sean in a little bit more of a ESPN marketable way.
Right.
So I think that's what's gonna happen. And even like since he's been at Extreme Couture, I've noticed a little bit too with like he has, I feel like, still even come a long way with before, because like I wasn't a big fan of him either before. Like I was a fan of him as a fighter, but yeah, like I would see videos of him sparring or like him talking and I'd be like, who is this guy? And of course, until they make it to a high level, you know, it's hard for them to get away with that, and fans like, you know, respect it, I guess. But
Right.
once they have that belt around their waist, it's like, yeah, you can say whatever you want. Yeah, like you can call
Right.
me ugly if you want. I don't even care. But yeah, it's funny. But I think the biggest thing that I like about Sean that I've noticed that he kind of like people gravitate toward him is just because he's relatable. And he kind of has like that underdog story, and it's like, yeah, he wasn't even supposed to be in that fight. The UFC didn't even want him to get that fight. So it's
Right.
like for him to come from, you know, the upbringing that he came from, you know, he kind of talks about how, you know, he grew up and, you know, his parents weren't the best, and he, you know, got into all kinds of trouble and stuff like that. He got in the motorcycle accident, like all kinds of, you know, crazy things happen. But I think a lot of people relate to him in a lot of ways because, you know, you think about most people aren't like Israel Adesanya, you know, like most people that you
Agreed.
meet every day, you go to the store, you
Agreed.
go to the gas station, most people are more like Sean Strickland. And I
Yeah.
think that's why a lot of people like him. And I think that's why he actually probably will have a lot of success, you know, especially if he kind of, you know, does maybe polish up a little bit. Because yeah, people like him. People really
Yeah.
do. And yeah, and I think just him continuing to evolve with training at Extreme Couture and doing all the things that he's doing and kind of leaning into his personality too, which I think is fun. You had the cancel me shirt on. I love that. That was hilarious. And he's just kind of leaning into who Sean Strickland is and kind of creating a brand out of it, which is great. That's exactly what he should be doing. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be fun to see, yeah, different matchups in middleweight, you know, because yeah, before it was just the Izzy show, and
Right.
now it's like now we actually have some fights.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Wide open for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any where can people find you, follow you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, no, simple. So yeah, of course, anything on Fight Bananas. You know, Fight Bananas official on IG. We're really trying to, probably rest of the year, we're going to really try to push and market the YouTube channel. That's kind of one thing we've been talking about, really trying to get our YouTube doing. We're going to do more videos, maybe like once a day, like a topic, whatever the hot topic is. If it's like how the TKO merger with WWE and UFC, like we're going to go 5 or 10 minute topic. It can be me, it can be one of our awesome, you know, it can be Maddie, it can be yourself, it can be Jonathan, it can be someone talking about it. We're going to do a video a day, pushing it on YouTube, trying to really build up our YouTube page, because our Facebook page is amazing. We have 375,000 followers. Our IG page is doing great, always says constantly growth. But our YouTube page has been like just stagnant. So that's something I'm gonna be like, all right, boom, our YouTube page. Rest of 2023, that's what I'm definitely working on. Myself is easy. It's I have like one of those early IG pages from like 2010. I guess that's showing my age a little bit, 2005 or something. Just add David Van Auken, my name. Yeah, the podcast is easy to find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those really good channels. The Dave Van Auken Show. But yeah, got a podcast with Jillian the Savage Robertson called Mike Cuddles. You can go cop that. All the post-fight shows are out. You can usually get those under the Dave Van Auken Show. Ben and Bananas is every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. That's under the Fight Bananas banner as well. Also, you can check that out on millions.co. Maddie Levine show, Peel Back with Maddie Levine. That's Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. And that's just the beginning. That's just a little taste of Fight Bananas. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. We got a lot of content right now coming out, and I'll be doing the post show tonight, Contender Series. So
love it.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future with Fight Bananas. I'm excited to be part of the team and just working with you guys on whatever comes next. I'm just like ready for the next thing that you're gonna call me and ask me to do. I'm like, what? What are we gonna do next?
You never know. You never know. It's crazy. There's just so many events. The PFL. It's crazy. The PFL wanted someone from Fight Bananas there in Washington, D.C. You never know. You might get that phone call. You never know. So it's wild. A ton of Gamebred stuff. I know Gamebred's got that Biloxi show we talked off air about. Island fights. I commentate Island fights. They always want people there. So it's just this churning content. It's great. It's awesome. Pretty pumped.
Absolutely. I'm excited to come actually see everything in person too, like the studio, whenever I'm down there in Florida. So that'd be sick. So I'm excited about that. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for coming on. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon since I'm doing the show later, but I appreciate your time, and yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, Bree. You're the best. Later.
All right. You too.